Hi, I'm Carlos Lopez, and I am doing a video presentation for my Unit 7 topic mastery. The topic I had chosen was at what age should mental training begin among our athletes? The reason I asked this question was first of all, I am a coach, and I understand that I've used mental training personally as a professional and was wondering at what age should I be able to start teaching my kids. I coach a team from that are 10 to 12-year old, and I was wondering, would it be too early? Would it be just a waste of time to try to teach them mentally because I know the benefits of doing it? So that was my first reason in asking the question. And another reason is I feel that mental training is just teaching them another tool. It's the brain is a tool. So when you train your arm in throwing the ball, or you train in hitting the ball for your hand-eye coordination, it's the same as I'm training mentally. When I mentally train, I'm training my brain. I'm trying to make my brain more efficient and understand situations better. So this all led me to research the topic. And in researching, it was kind of interesting to find out that the average age to begin mental training is 10 to 12 years old. And at first I thought, wow, that's really young. That's kind of young. And that was all based on the understanding of what mental training was. Mental training for me was what I experienced at the college level, in which we had a professional named Ken Revisa who worked with multiple major league players and worked with Joe Madden, the coach from the Chicago Cubs. And the experiences which I had with him were so dynamic and so unique, where I use things still today in the discussions I have with him. And I thought for a reason, I read the research and I was like, okay, this can't be right. And throughout my readings, the average age was 10 to 12. Obviously, it can be. They also describe that it can be younger if the kid is more mature, or it might need to be a little older if the kid is not as mature. The first step in this mental training is understanding that you need to have a kid who wants to learn or who wants to work on his brain. He wants to get better for the right reasons, is also stated. Because there's plenty of kids out there that if they don't understand why they're doing something and they just do it, it's not going to help them. They're not processing why they're trying to make their selves mentally stronger, make their brain more efficient in this sense. So I think the first step, as described, is understanding that their parents need to be there with them. They need to be willing to learn and wanting to mentally train, and with the proper goals in mind. Again, mental training is not about making your kids the best winners or the most successful players of all time. It's about bettering them and making them understand that this is a game and understand that their brain's there to help them. That's what our brain is there for everything, including sports. So in the research, I learned that I have actually been mentally trained ever since I was 10 years old. I say this because one of the stories which describes in one of the articles states that players who practice really well, who they all have the tools and understandings of the game, yet when they get to the actual game, they struggle. They struggle for multiple reasons in which they're just not doing what they want to do, or they're not paying attention, not focusing. All these things come into play in which someone would use mental training. Mental training, such as making people understand that the game isn't as important as it is, making the kids relax, not putting so much pressure on the kids, which is why it is important that the parents are also understanding what you are doing as a coach and as a team. Because if the coach is telling the kid that he needs to relax and the game isn't important, yet his parent is yelling at him every time he gets in the car or screaming at him during the game and making the kid feel as though he needs to succeed, it's gonna make the kid worse. He's gonna have a mental block. He's not gonna be able to achieve at the fullest and highest level of his potential or her potential, and it's because the parents will be diminishing it. So that's the first thing we need to understand. As a coach, we need to work with our parents at the younger age. The younger age children, that 10 to 12 in which we can begin mental training, it is important that parents are involved and the kid wants to learn. The older you get, the less parents are going to be involved, and the more the kids are going to have their own willingness as well. It is also important that we simplify in the description of mental training. Mental training is not something that needs to be confusing or we need to use big words, or it's just a set of ideas in which you're going to relay to someone to help them understand what they're trying to do. So when dealing with 9, 10, 11, 12 year olds, you have to make it simple. It doesn't mean it's any less effective for them, but it's just easier for them to understand. And the easier they can understand, again, the less stress they're going to put on themselves for mental training, which is something that we're trying to build up in them in games and in sports. And the older you get, obviously, it just goes hand in hand with the group of people you're going to deal with. So I thought this was really interesting to understand that mental training isn't you're going to a lab and they're testing your brain and they're doing all these little things on you. No, it's just simple things that, simple words, simple things that all coaches can do, all coaches can learn. And it's something that's so simple that I don't need to go buy something. I don't need to go buy a fancy batting cage or a fancy football throwing machine or anything like that in which I can help my kids. I just have to understand what's going on. You have to have an open relationship with your players and the parents to understand what's going on, what's happening, and what tools you can use to make them relax mentally and use their brain for the good. And I think that's something that all coaches should want to do with their players. And I found it very interesting that I can begin with my team at 10 to 12 years old, and I can begin mental training. And actually, I already have, because of the research that I've done on this topic, that my team, I have talks with my team after every practice to make sure we understand that the game is about having fun. It's not about winning, and trying to make them relax as much as possible. I think we all remember a time when playing a sport or doing something competitive that we weren't at our highest level because we were trying too hard. I think very few times do you see trying harder helping in the sports world. The more relaxed you are, it just goes down to muscle memory. What have you been practicing? What have you been doing throughout your time? And most of the time, as a coach, we practice a lot more than we play. So we play an hour and a half, but you practice. I mean, you can practice up to an hour a day. So 5, 6, 7 hours a week, depending on game schedule. So practicing should make the kids better in their gameplay, and not putting such a stress level on the gameplay would make them better. So in conclusion, I mean, I described many things that the real question was, at what age should kids begin training? And I think 10 to 12 would be the proper age, as long as the kids are mature and they understand why they're mental training. We're just trying to get their brain better, in which it can help them become better players, and better players just for their skill level. We don't expect all these children just by doing mental training, they're all going to be the next all-stars or all-stars in their sport and this and that, because that's not what it's about. Coaching is done to help your players and make them understand the love of the game and love competition, and understand that winning and losing isn't the end-all be-all in life. And that's why mental training is so important, to understand that mentally you have to simplify this, all games. And your parents need to be there, and the coach needs to be there to assist in that. And this is why mental training is so important. So that is it for my presentation. Thank you.